Hello and thanks for joining us for another edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Mitchell Ringos. Two people are facing murder charges relating to the death of a Sioux Lookout woman that occurred in that community on August 11th as the result of the OPP's investigation. 36-year-old Alan Yerksa and 21-year-old Aaron Gray, both from Sioux Lookout, have been charged with first-degree murder. The victim has been identified as 40-year-old Adriana Bottle. First responders were called to the incident at an undisclosed location, and Bottle was pronounced dead at the scene. Police have not provided any further details about the circumstances of her death, as a postmortem was to be conducted in Toronto. The two suspects remain in custody and appeared in court in Sioux Lookout this past week. 21 new beds planned for Sioux Lookout Supportive Treatment Facility were announced this week by the Associate Provincial Minister for Mental Health and Addictions. That would raise the total number of beds in the community from 16 to 37 by the end of this year. Carl Langdon was in Sioux Lookout and files this report.
Ontario's Associate Minister for Mental Health and Addictions, Michael Tobolo, was in Sioux Lookout to announce further funding for the local supportive treatment centre, situated at the former Queen Elizabeth District High School. More than $4 million is coming from the province's Addiction Recovery Fund, a $90 million pool set aside by the province to tackle rising tides of addiction across Ontario. Tobolo says the additional 21 beds represents an essential step forward.
But the work's not done, because in building a continuum of care, yes, withdrawal management, detox is important, pre- and post-treatment beds is important, addiction treatment beds is important, supportive beds are important, and every one of those pieces has to be built within the local communities to help individuals have the support they need where and when they need it.
Those individual pieces that Tobolo mentions all represent individual steps in tackling substance use disorders. The Chief Administrator of the Kenora District Services Board, Henry Wall, notes that the local OPP and the residents of Sioux Lookout should be commended for their efforts to address the suffering caused by addiction.
The supportive housing would not have happened without the support of police. So it's one thing I will say about Sioux Lookout is it's a community where everybody kind of rolls up their sleeve and says, how do we actually do this as a collective?
Over half of that provincial addiction recovery fund has gone to communities north of Sudbury. Many of those municipalities act as hubs for those that reside even further north. Sioux Lookout's mayor, Doug Lawrence, acknowledged the need for organizations to work together and took a moment to point out the key role that Indigenous communities have had in organizing treatment services in the community.
And this funding is the type of funding that even enhances that and brings agencies and people together to work together. And let's not forget, as Henry gave the land acknowledgement, we're here because of 30 First Nations to our north, and we are the hub, the service center for that. And those First Nations have gone through a history that has led to the need.
The Supportive Treatment Center is run by the Sioux Lookout Friendship Accord. Executive Director of the center, Tana Troniak, assures that service delivery is provided through a culturally relevant approach.
Anything I can do to make a person's life better is really where I come from. I don't like to speak a lot, so I don't need praises. I'm just here to help my people. So that's kind of it, and make sure our culture is brought into everything I do.
Provincial studies have found that during the pandemic, Northern Ontario experienced rates of opioid-related deaths that were 3 times higher than elsewhere and 79% higher than previous years. Carl Langdon, TBT News.
The replacement of a major culvert in Atikokan is expected to be completed in late September. A 50-foot section of Mercury Avenue was washed out 3 months ago when the culvert below the roadway collapsed. The washout on May 9th made Mercury Avenue completely inaccessible and damaged Atikokan's main water line, causing a temporary disruption and a boil water advisory. The culvert had already been scheduled for replacement this summer, but Atikokan Mayor Rob Ferguson says getting the project moving after the old culvert failed was no simple feat.
It's a lot more work than what we thought it was. What I thought it was going to be, because we actually had to divert the river to get the culvert in. We're looking hopefully sometime this month that's back in service. But again, I would rather have it go an extra couple of weeks and have it done right than, trying to rush things and not get the finished product that we were hoping for.
Ferguson says it's possible the big job won't be fully complete until early October. The town of Atikokan declared a state of emergency on May 11th, which Ferguson says will be lifted sometime after construction wraps up. August 14th was Treaty Day in Martin Falls First Nation, where the federal government doles out $4 annuity payments to each member. But the First Nation is calling out the government for failing to uphold the rest of their treaty obligations.
I'm calling on Canada to honor its duty of the Crown, the honor of the Crown, which is seemingly absent from our dealings with the federal government, and also the provincial government.
Lack of infrastructure funding is top of the list of grievances for Martin Falls Chief Bruce Achni-Penescum. Last year, the First Nation declared a state of emergency when lack of housing led to a teacher shortage that shut the school down for 3 months. More than 20 years since first raising the issue, teachers will be moving into their new housing this September. But with no service lots available and no funding to run new utilities, the teacherages are built on what used to be the school's baseball diamond.
The treaty does not specifically say infrastructure, but rather it's the benevolence of the Crown and its dealings with the First Nations people. I walk around the suburbs of towns and cities, and people live very comfortably. And yet we're struggling in the community, so we need to address those issues.
Achni-Penescum says that in order to build a new police station, they had to run 200 meters of water and sewage connection lines out to an unserviced lot, and that 2/3 of the First Nations members cannot live at home because there is no available housing. The decision by Alterna Savings to close their Ignace branch on September 15th is being met with concern from the community. It's the only financial institution left in Ignace, and the nearest bank is 100 kilometers away in Dryden. Carl Langdon spoke with interim mayor Kim Bagri about the closure and brings more in this report.
The township of Ignace's interim mayor Kim Bagri was shocked by a recent phone call with Alterna Savings, which has announced plans to close their branch in Ignace without first consulting the community.
Very disappointed in them because they never gave us any notice, really. They just called probably 2 weeks before people got their letters and said, this is what's happening.
Alterna justified the closure by citing issues maintaining adequate levels of staffing and low investment interest. But Bagri, whose council has given her the task of finding a solution, says she has made attempts to offer the bank incentives to stay, including offers from former employees willing to come out of retirement to staff the bank. The township has also offered to provide funding to train new employees and even space within their municipal building to offset expenses.
I have heard the odd comment, what is council doing for us? Well, you know what? We are not sitting back not doing anything for them. We are fighting for this community. And now we're going to take it up a step. We are going to go to the board of directors.
Bagri has been left pleading with Alterna as the only other option left for the residents of Ignace who need to deposit cash is to drive over 100 kilometers to the nearest physical bank branch in Dryden. At the top of the list of those who will face difficulties if the community loses Alterna are local business owners who routinely make cash deposits and would incur multiple hours of time lost each time they need to make a deposit. Local business owners we spoke to were clearly distraught, describing the situation as a nightmare.
Give us a year. Give us a year. Let the community prove to you that we can keep this bank open.
In a statement put out by the township this week, council stated that they're also exploring mitigating solutions in the event Alterna does go ahead and closes the branch. Carl Langdon, TBT News.
Chiefs and delegates from the 49 Nishnawbe Aski First Nations gathered in Thunder Bay this week for their annual summer meeting. The 41st Kiwewin Conference featured presenters and discussions on a variety of topics relating to the region, as well as a swearing-in ceremony on day 2 for Nan's Grand Chief. Jess Clement has the details.
Leaders from the Nan communities have gathered together to discuss and share knowledge with the goal to help improve the well-being of their members. The 3-day event started with the grand entry, followed by opening remarks from Acting Grand Chief Annabette Achni-Penescum, Deputy Grand Chief Victor Linklater, and Deputy Grand Chief Bobby Narcisse, who says with guidance from the 49 chiefs, he believes they're moving into a new era of Nan.
Really looking at ways where we advocate and really look for the betterment of our citizens as we move ahead and it's very important work.
Topics of discussion will range from child welfare laws to the First Nation drinking water legislation. The gathering will also include presentations from a number of groups, including one on policing by the NAPS and OPP communication centers.
In the north, we do not have 911, but instead we have a 10-digit number that we are asked to utilize in emergency situation. It has there has been a lot of concerns and problems with that, everything from the language barrier, and then also that lack of being able to access that number.
Achni Penescum says, as leaders, it's their responsibility to gather yearly and have those discussions.
Nishnawbe Aski Nation is a political territorial organization. It is very necessary for our chiefs to gather. We are a governance and it is our responsibility and opportunity to gather and to make those decisions together and have those discussions.
The conference continues on Wednesday with a swearing-in ceremony for Alvin Fiddler, who is returning to his former role as Grand Chief of Nan. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
We'll have more from Kiwewan after the break with the swearing-in of Nan's Grand Chief. Alvin Fiddler is once again the Grand Chief of Nishnawbe Aski Nation. The swearing-in ceremony took place during Day 2 of the 41st Annual Kiwewan Conference here in Thunder Bay. Fiddler says his #1 priority will be restoring Nan's reputation and relationships. Jessica Clement reports.
Alvin Fiddler has returned to the role of Grand Chief after being away for 2 years. It was made official on Wednesday during a swearing-in ceremony that took place during the 41st Annual Kiwewan Conference.
People of Nishnawbe Aski Nation and councillors, I present to you your Grand Chief, Alvin Fiddler.
Fiddler, from Muskrat Dam First Nation, is replacing former Grand Chief Derek Fox, who was removed from the post in May over alleged code of conduct violations. Fiddler has 25 years of leadership experience within Nan and was first elected Grand Chief in 2015. He stepped down in 2021 to run for National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, but lost the election. Fiddler says while he feels rested and ready to take on the role again, it wasn't an easy decision.
My kids, they encouraged me to consider stepping up again, and So we had some dinner conversations, and they're actually the ones that really encouraged me to take this on.
Fiddler says there are a number of important issues he hopes to address as Grand Chief, including resource development and land claims. However, his first priority will be restoring Nan's reputation.
We can't ignore that and pretend that didn't happen. We have to, as I was advised to do by the elders, to acknowledge what's happened and to take appropriate steps to do the restoration and the healing and the mending that we need to do to restore relationships within Nan and also relationships with external partners.
According to Fiddler, the strained relationships within Nan are largely related to the lack of communication and presence of leaders in communities, which he says he plans to change by meeting with chiefs and members. He says he also plans on reaching out to Derek Fox.
To ensure that everyone remains in that circle, that's how we keep it strong, is if everyone is a part of that, and that includes Derek and his family, and we will make it our effort to reach out to him.
The term for Grand Chief will be for just 1 year until another election is held. Fiddler says he hasn't decided yet whether he will seek a full 3-year term in 2024. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
Meanwhile, communities in Nishnawbe Aski Nation territory should soon have reliable access to emergency call services in their native languages.
Through many of our meetings and many of our discussions with our communities, one of the biggest things that we hear is the comm center. We need to have people who can understand the languages in our comm center.
In a presentation at the Kiwaywin Conference, the Nishnawbe Aski Police Service announced an initiative that will integrate Ojibwe, Oji Cree, and Cree translation services into the OPP dispatch services used by NAPS to direct emergency calls in communities. It is expected to go live in January. For now, they're relying on the goodwill of a few fluent officers.
Right now, we have 23 NAPS officers that speak traditional languages, and they have given permission to use their cell phone and home number to contact them should interpretation be required.
Since 2021, communities served by NAPS must call a 10-digit number for emergency service where there is no 911 service. Brown emphasizes that there are a number of big advantages to using the centralized line, notably that there is always someone available to answer the call. A major milestone has been reached in the highway twinning project between Thunder Bay and Nipigon. Traffic is now flowing on the new eastbound lanes near Dorian. However, construction work continues and there are still traffic delays for motorists. Work began on the $75 million project in the fall of 2020. As of the 16th, all 8.6 kilometers of the newly constructed eastbound lanes are open and traffic is moving along both sides of the divided highway. But all 4 lanes won't be fully open until the repaving along sections of the westbound lanes is completed. The ongoing work will also see traffic delays towards the east end of the twin section, and lines still need to be painted on some sections of the highway. The project is expected to be fully completed sometime in September. With northwestern Ontario seeing more accidents and fatalities on area highways, Thunder Bay Superior North MPP Lise Vaugeois wants to see 24-hour truck inspection stations and better road safety initiatives. Vaugeois believes that recent transport collisions in our region are mainly caused by the lack of driver training and not just during the winter months. She feels the trucking companies should also be held more accountable for accidents. While the construction of a new inspection station east of Thunder Bay is soon to be complete, the NDP member for Thunder Bay Superior North says the truck inspections won't be done consistently if the station ends up being understaffed.
And so we've got a brand new inspection station coming open maybe sometime this month or in September. Fantastic. But then the release says they're only going to staff it as needed. Well, what does that mean? Those stations need to be staffed, if not 24/7, for substantial amounts of time.
The new inspection station started construction October of 2021. The MTO hasn't confirmed when the $30 million project will be completed and ready for big truck inspections. Kenora Rainy River MPP and Minister of Northern Development Greg Rickford has been touring his riding this week, making a number of funding announcements. Rickford announced nearly $500,000 for the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund for green space improvements around Kenora's Central Community Club, including accessible trails, lighting, benches, landscaping, and canopy trees. In Dryden, he announced over $160,000 in NOHFC funding for airport upgrades, including resurfacing the terminal floor, new plumbing, and more accessible washrooms. And in Emo, $150,000 is going towards kitchen renovations at the Knox United Church. Meanwhile, he announced another $580,000 in funding for building repairs and upgrades from the Partner Facility Renewal Program. That money will go to 4 different recipients to fund 18 different projects. It's time for a short commercial break. We'll be right back with a look at last weekend's Live from the Rock Folk Festival. Hundreds of music fans made the trip to Red Rock this past weekend for the 2023 Live from the Rock Folk Festival. Artists and attendees alike were praising this year's festival for the music, the picturesque setting, and the friendly atmosphere. Lee Noonan was there.
The laid-back folk vibes of this year's Live from the Rock Festival were spiced up with a little dobro and brass, and festival goers seemed to enjoy the change, with crowds up and dancing to high-energy sets from the genre-bending King Cardiac and bluegrass band The Barrel Boys.
You can't get better views than this. This is pretty nice, you know. So obviously the nature and like the swimming out here has been fabulous. The drive-in, like you can't really beat that drive along the lake. I mean, highlights, I mean, there's just been like, I can't like name them all, but there's just been so many good bands here.
More classic folk sounds reigned over most of the 3-day festival, with a lineup that included a lot of new talent.
People come and they say, you know what, we haven't heard of a lot of these people, but we always know they're going to be fabulous. We're kind of an up-and-comer festival because that's what our budget dictates, but you know what, there's so much talent out there.
Milo estimates the festival contributes in the low 6 figures to the local economy and says he's grateful to the roughly 170 volunteers who made the event possible and for the support from the town of Red Rock.
They give us the use of the park, the works crews pitch in. We store things in various buildings around town when we have to. They're super supportive of the event.
Locals also attend the festival in big numbers, says Mallow, with many others coming in from around the region and much farther afield.
It's really too much fun. I've had a chance to be a volunteer. I've had a chance to listen to a number of the acts. They're incredible.
It's been incredible this year. We've been coming every year. For the last few anyway, ever since COVID. And now it's become like an annual tradition for us.
This is wonderful. It is, the music is outstanding.
All the people we
are
work
so
with are
friendly
beautiful.
and it's just a
Yes.
delightful time we're having.
Yeah.
Organizers estimate attendance levels are back up to pre-pandemic levels, with 1,900 to 2,000 people attending over the 3 days of the festival. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
For the first time in over 30 years, a brewery in Fort Frances is pouring locally produced pints for thirsty locals. Howlett Brewing is owned and operated by a local couple, Tanya and Andrew Mueller, who were inspired to open the business after moving back from Vancouver. They jumped on the opportunity when they found the perfect site, and after 3 years of prep work, the brewery recently opened its doors, with Andrew filling the role of master brewer and Tanya heading the front of house.
We have a lot of local businesses that want to carry our beer. We just don't have the supply right now. I do think there will be a time where we're going to be able to do that once we can. It's only been 4 days and we need to catch up.
Honestly, there's so many beers on the roster right now. It's fun. It's overwhelming in such a fun way.
Howlett Brewing serves 4 rotating beers on tap, all of which are brewed right on site. That's all the time we have for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you right back here next week.